The early Colorado morning air was crisp, almost biting, as the transport bus rolled to a stop outside the sprawling gates of Fort Carson. Dust and gravel swirled under the wheels like a silent warning. Specialist Mara Leeton swung her duffel over her shoulder and stepped down onto the gravel lot, boots sinking slightly with every careful step. Around her, the base hummed with the muted chaos of daily life. Soldiers jogging past in tight formation, the distant rumble of Humvees, and the metallic clang of training gear from the nearby firing range. Mara kept her gaze forward, her expression unreadable. She was new, yes, but she had a way of observing that made it impossible to underestimate her. Every glance she stole, every movement she recorded mentally, she filed away, analyzing patterns, measuring reactions, predicting outcomes. People assumed she was quiet because she lacked confidence or fear. They were wrong. She was quiet because she had learned that silence could be a weapon, a shield, and a mirror all at once. As she walked past the barracks, a group of soldiers gathered near the entrance, their boots scraping gravel and sink, heads craned toward her. A smattering of snickers reached her ears, but she ignored them. They didn't matter. What mattered was awareness, timing, and patience. Her duffel bounced slightly against her hip, but her steps remained steady, deliberate. Even the sun, low in the horizon, seemed to hesitate over the base that morning, as if wary of her arrival. In the chow hall, the air was thick with the scent of fried eggs, burnt toast, and the unmistakable tang of anxiety that comes when soldiers evaluate a newcomer. Mara found a table near the far corner, unassuming yet strategically positioned. From here, she could see the room, monitor movement, and gauge the subtle dynamics between squads. She caught the eye of a sergeant sitting near the entrance, Staff Sergeant Riker, though she didn't yet know his name. He gave a subtle nod, one that was more of a test than a greeting. Mara nodded back, calm, collected, precise. Not everyone was impressed. One soldier, a tall man with a scar running down his jaw, dropped his tray with a clatter near her. Eggs and toast slid slightly across the linoleum, leaving a streak that mirrored his impatience. "You sure you're cut out for this?" he asked, voice low but laced with challenge. Mara didn't flinch. She looked up briefly, meeting his gaze with an intensity that made him blink. "We'll see," she said simply, her tone neutral but carrying an undertone of steel. The man froze, then muttered something under his breath before retreating. After breakfast, Mara walked the perimeter of her new assignment, taking in the base with methodical scrutiny. Barricades, guard towers, motion sensors, nothing escaped her notice. She memorized exit routes, supply locations, and blind spots, cataloging everything as if she had years of experience, though in reality she had learned most of it in clandestine programs that few even knew existed. Her squadmates tried to make small talk, but she kept responses brief. They labeled her aloof, reserved, shy, perfect labels to underestimate someone who had lived a life of calculation and precision. By mid-afternoon, Mara found herself in the gym lifting weights in silence. The rhythmic clank of iron plates echoed in the cavernous room. She noticed eyes following her not openly but subtly from corners of the room, from behind the mirrored walls. Whispers floated toward her like smoke in the air. Who does she think she is? Quiet type, probably useless. She'll crack. Mara ignored them, her focus absolute. Each repetition, each breath, each measured movement was an exercise in control, in patience, in self-discipline. But under that calm exterior, a storm brewed. A storm built from years of experiences that most would never survive, and she carried it all silently. That evening she returned to her barracks room, dimly lit and almost eerily quiet. She shared the space with 3 others, none of whom had spoken more than a word to her all day. As she unpacked, she listened. Not to the chatter inside her room, but to the whispers outside her door. Laughter, taunts, rumors, small but sharp. They were assessing her, probing for weakness, judging before knowing. Mara's jaw clenched ever so slightly. Let them test her. Let them underestimate her. It was always more revealing when people believed they were in control. Mara placed her rifle carefully on the rack, running a hand over the smooth, cold metal. Her reflection in the window caught her attention, eyes focused, expression tight. She remembered the first time she held a weapon, the first time she realized the weight of precision and the burden of responsibility. It wasn't just training, it was survival, and she had been living in survival mode far longer than anyone at this base could imagine. Night descended slowly over Fort Carson. The barracks quieted, but Mara remained alert, awake in the stillness, listening for the slightest disturbance. Her mind wandered briefly, not in thought but in assessment. The base layout, squad movements, patrol schedules, perimeter blind spots. It wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. And in this quiet moment, she allowed herself a tiny, almost imperceptible smile. Because she knew something her new squad didn't yet understand. Chaos was coming. The calm, ordered life of the base, the jokes, the hierarchy, the petty rivalries, would soon collide with a reality that none of them were ready for. Mara wasn't just a new arrival. She was a catalyst, a storm contained within the frame of a seemingly quiet soldier. And in that darkness, just as she was about to lie down, a sound froze her blood. The distant hum of engines, the faint metallic rattle of machinery where it shouldn't have been. Not a threat yet, but a warning. Mara's eyes snapped open. Every instinct screamed. Someone was moving and they weren't supposed to be there. She reached for her radio, checked the locks on her door, and scanned the dimly lit hallways outside her room. Heart steady, hands steady, breath steady. Calm was her armor, precision her sword. The base, with all its soldiers and rules, didn't yet know the storm that had arrived. And as the night deepened, Mara realized one undeniable truth. She would not wait to be tested. She would act first, strike first if necessary, and survive by whatever means required. Those who thought she was quiet, meek, or unprepared were about to discover the hard way that appearances were often the most dangerous deception. Because Mara Leighton wasn't just another soldier. She was a force waiting to be unleashed. And the base, her new home and soon her battlefield, was about to learn that the quietest person in the room was often the deadliest. The morning after Mara's arrival brought with it a new kind of tension. The base seemed quieter than usual, but it was the deceptive kind, the stillness that precedes a storm. Soldiers moved with their routines, but the atmosphere had shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly. Mara noticed it immediately. Heads turned as she passed, glances lingered, conversations faltered mid-word. Whispers floated through the air like static, speculation, judgment, curiosity. Mara walked with purpose, boots striking the concrete in a rhythm that was both measured and unrelenting. She knew they were watching her. She didn't mind. In fact, she welcomed it. Every stare, every whispered bet, every scoff was data, information she cataloged carefully. By the end of the first week, it was clear she had disrupted the delicate balance of hierarchy and ego that ruled her squad. Most of the squad were men in their mid-20s, seasoned soldiers who had been through multiple deployments, who believed experience made them untouchable. Mara was 21, but the way she moved, the way she carried herself, hinted at knowledge that went far beyond her years. During physical training drills, she completed the obstacle course with a calculated efficiency that left some soldiers muttering under their breath. They called it luck. She called it preparation. Staff Sergeant Riker watched her closely, his sharp eyes missing nothing. He had a reputation for breaking soldiers down only to see if they rebuilt themselves stronger. He prided himself on knowing the weak from the strong. Mara had already intrigued him on day one, but now, after watching her during the morning run, he knew there was more beneath the surface. "Leighton," he barked later during weapons assembly practice. Mara's fingers paused mid-motion and she looked up. "Yes, Sergeant." "Too calm," Riker said, stepping closer. His shadow stretched across her workspace. "Way too calm. I've never seen someone so composed with a new weapon in their hands. What are you hiding?" "Nothing, Sergeant," she replied, her voice steady. Not defiant, not timid, just facts. Riker stared, trying to parse the truth. The calmness was unnerving. He had spent years reading soldiers like open books, and Mara's pages were tightly sealed, written in code he couldn't decipher. Something about her made his instincts flare, an unease he hadn't felt in years. After the drill, Mara moved to the perimeter checkpoint with a measured pace, scanning the base and the surrounding fields with hawk-like precision. Every vehicle, every shadow, every flicker of movement registered in her mind. It wasn't paranoia, it was experience. She noted the placement of guards, the angles of the floodlights, the line of sight from each tower. Her squadmates noticed her meticulousness and whispered again. "She's overthinking," one said. "She's gonna get herself laughed at." Another replied, "Or she's planning something. Watch her." Mara heard nothing, recording everything. Later, during lunch in the mess hall, Mara sat alone, plate untouched for a few moments as she scanned the room. Soldiers exchanged sly glances across tables. One of the younger privates, clearly trying to impress the veterans, leaned toward a friend. "She's too quiet," he whispered. "Bet she's hiding something big. I wouldn't trust her for a second." The friend smirked. "Quiet ones are always trouble. Mark my words, she's gonna snap." Mara's eyes flicked to them for a fraction of a second, calm but piercing. Neither of them met her gaze. They didn't know she already knew their names, ranks, and training backgrounds, all from observation, all stored in her mind like a mental dossier. By mid-afternoon, the squad was called for a combat simulation in the mock urban village behind the base. Mara approached with quiet determination. The simulation involved a high-intensity scenario, multiple hostiles, civilians caught in crossfire, and a limited time frame to neutralize threats while protecting the mock population. It was a test designed to reveal hesitation, doubt, and panic. Riker assigned roles quickly. Mara's squadmates eyed her warily. "Don't hold us back, rookie," one muttered. Mara didn't respond. She positioned herself strategically, analyzing the buildings, windows, alleyways, every potential threat angle, and calculated the most efficient routes to cover the squad and civilians. The simulation began. Alarms blared. Smoke canisters popped, filling the air with a haze that reduced visibility. Mara moved with precision, her steps measured yet fluid. The squad initially struggled, hesitant, fumbling with communication, tripping over the chaos. Mara kept her focus, directing traffic with concise hand signals, repositioning teammates quietly but firmly. Riker's voice cut through the noise. "Leighton, front and center." She sprinted to his side, eyes steady. "What is it, Sergeant?" "Too calm," he repeated, frustration creeping in. "This isn't a drill you can dominate with composure alone. You're hiding something. What is it?" Mara's jaw tightened. She didn't flinch, didn't break her rhythm. "I'm focused, Sergeant, nothing else." Riker exhaled sharply. Something about her was unnerving. He had seen hundreds of soldiers freeze under pressure, panic, or lash out recklessly, but Mara didn't. She was a paradox, young yet seasoned, quiet yet commanding. The simulation intensified. Explosions of smoke grenades forced soldiers to adapt or falter. Mara's squad moved more cohesively under her silent guidance than under Riker's loud commands. Hostiles, or actors playing hostiles, attempted to flank the squad. Mara anticipated every move, repositioned herself and others, and neutralized threats before they escalated. Her teammates watched in astonishment. Even the ones who had mocked her just days ago now kept a cautious distance, unsure whether to fear her or admire her. Mara's movements were deliberate but lethal in efficiency, her focus razor-sharp, her timing perfect. Riker stood back, tension writ across his face. He had trained soldiers like Mara before, but never one so young and yet so unflinching under pressure. He noted the ease with which she assessed danger, adapted to chaos, and commanded respect silently. It was unnerving. It was remarkable. As the simulation drew to a close, Mara's squad secured the mock civilians and neutralized the final hostile. Sweat dripped from brows, hearts pounded in chests, and the simulated explosions left ears ringing. Mara, however, remained composed, breathing slow and steady, scanning the area as if expecting the chaos to return at any moment. Afterward, her squadmates whispered again, but this time their tone had shifted. There was awe in it, tinged with fear. She's not just good, one said quietly. She's different. Riker's mind raced. Something about Mara felt dangerous, but not in the way of recklessness. She was dangerous because she was controlled, precise, and capable of adapting faster than anyone else he had ever seen. Her calm was an unnatural thing in someone her age. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Mara returned to her barracks room. She removed her boots, set her gear carefully aside, and stood by the window, staring out at the sprawling base below. The lights flickered on, illuminating the training grounds, the roadways, the buildings, the guard towers, every detail mapped in her mind. Her reflection caught her attention in the window. Eyes focused, jaw set, shoulders squared. She had made no friends yet, earned no trust, but she had made an impression. That alone was enough for the first week. She knew her presence had stirred something in the squad, a mix of curiosity, suspicion, and perhaps fear. And as she leaned against the window, listening to the distant hum of the base, Mara felt the first tremors of anticipation. Something was coming, though she didn't know what or who. But she knew this much: when it arrived, she would be ready. Not waiting, not hopping, ready. Because Mara Leighton was not a soldier who followed. She was one who observed, calculated, and struck. And those who dismissed her as quiet or harmless would soon discover that appearances were often the most dangerous deception. The shadows outside her window stretched long in the fading light, whispering promises of challenges ahead. Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. Her calm exterior was not surrender, it was preparation. And the base, with its rules, routines, and unsuspecting soldiers, was about to meet someone who would redefine what it meant to survive. The whispers outside her room carried a note of unease tonight, faint but unmistakable. Laughter, yes, but laced with apprehension. Something had shifted, and Mara could feel it in the air. Her pulse quickened, not from fear but from readiness. And in that charged quiet of the night, she made a silent promise to herself. When the test came, and it would come, she would strike first. Night fell over Fort Carson like a velvet shroud, the last streaks of twilight fading behind the jagged silhouette of the Rockies. The base, usually a hive of strict routines and well-worn drills, felt unnaturally still. Mara Leighton had been in her barracks room for hours, methodically checking her gear, her eyes flicking to the window every few minutes. Something in the air told her this wasn't a normal night. She couldn't explain it, not in words, but the tension in her chest, the prickle at the back of her neck, spoke volumes. The first sign was subtle, a low, almost imperceptible boom in the distance, like a steel door slamming miles away. Mara froze mid-motion, listening. Another boom followed, closer this time, vibrating through the concrete under her boots. Alarms immediately followed, a harsh wail cutting through the base, piercing the night. Mara's instincts kicked in. This wasn't training. This wasn't routine. This was real. She grabbed her rifle, slinging it over her shoulder with practiced efficiency. Her squadmates were already reacting, but chaos was evident in their movements. Some ran blindly, others hesitated, unsure what threat had triggered the alarm. Mara stepped into the hall, boots firm, scanning every angle. "Get to your stations," she barked, not loud but authoritative enough to make soldiers snap to attention. She didn't wait for orders. She moved. Riker's voice crackled over the radio, urgent and controlled. "All personnel to perimeter, South Sector breach, multiple hostiles." Mara's pulse accelerated. Multiple hostiles. That phrasing was deliberate, professionals, or at least trained enough to coordinate. She adjusted her grip on her rifle, mentally mapping escape routes and defensive positions. Every shadow in the barracks suddenly seemed alive, every flicker of light a potential threat. By the time she reached the South Sector with the squad, chaos had erupted fully. Soldiers were sprinting, shouting commands that overlapped into a jumbled mess. Dust and smoke rose from the perimeter walls as floodlights cut across the darkness, exposing the silhouettes of unknown figures. Mara's eyes narrowed. She noticed the patterns, the spacing, the hesitation, the coordination. They weren't just attacking, they were probing, searching. "Hold the line," Riker shouted, his voice strained as he tried to impose order. Mara's squad formed a crude line, but the hostiles were more numerous, advancing faster than expected. The shouting from the squad was tinged with panic. Adrenaline made their movements erratic. Mara, however, moved with precision. She scanned, predicted, and repositioned her teammates quietly but decisively. A flash of movement caught her eye, a shadow attempting to flank the squad from the east. Mara signaled instantly, pointing toward the threat and directing a pair of soldiers to intercept. Her commands were concise, calculated, delivered without hesitation. For a brief moment the squad froze in disbelief. Mara Leighton, the quiet, unassuming newcomer, was taking control. Riker's voice cut through the haze, disbelief and authority mixing. "Leighton, step back, that's my call." Mara didn't move, she didn't step aside. She assessed the situation, calculated risk versus advantage, and made a split-second decision. The shadow moved again, closer, faster. Mara pivoted, rifle raised, and fired a warning shot. The crack echoed through the night, followed immediately by two more. 3 rounds, 3 precise bursts that punctuated the chaos. The shadow froze, then ducked behind cover. The squad blinked. They hadn't anticipated this instinctive control, this lack of hesitation. Mara's calm, precise movements under pressure were unsettling. Riker swallowed hard. He knew he was witnessing something rare, a soldier untested in this base, yet behaving as though she had years of frontline experience. His authority felt challenged, but he couldn't deny the results. Mara was keeping them alive. "East side, move to cover the east side," Mara barked, pointing to the emerging threat. Soldiers scrambled, finally responding, and the squad formed a tighter, more defensive line. Mara moved between them, scanning, calculating, correcting mistakes without a single wasted motion. Then came the radio chatter. Hostile count increasing, multiple breaches, coordinates unknown. The panic in the voices was palpable. Soldiers glanced at each other, uncertainty creeping into their eyes. Mara's jaw clenched. She knew exactly what that meant. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and if the perimeter wasn't reinforced quickly, the entire sector could fall. A shadow detached itself from the main group, moving faster, more aggressive. Mara anticipated the path, stepped forward and struck first, kicking the approaching hostile to the ground with a precise motion that sent him sprawling. The squad gasped, staring at her. The air vibrated with tension. Mara didn't flinch. She had acted with the calculated force of someone who had survived worse and come out ahead. Riker barked orders, trying to regain control, but Mara's instincts had already altered the battlefield. The hostiles hesitated now, uncertain, as if they hadn't expected the quiet, unassuming soldier to strike with such speed and authority. Her actions were a shock, but they bought the squad precious seconds, seconds that could mean the difference between survival and disaster. Mara scanned again, assessing weaknesses in the hostile formation. 2 of them moving left. "Take cover behind the crates. Flank them on the right," she shouted. Soldiers moved as directed, surprised at their own obedience. Mara wasn't just reacting, she was dictating the flow of the fight. Amid the chaos, Mara caught sight of a fleeting detail that confirmed her suspicion. The intruders weren't acting randomly. Their movements mirrored patterns she had seen before, patterns drilled into her memory from years she had buried, training she was never supposed to discuss. Her heart tightened, a flicker of unease passing across her features. These weren't ordinary saboteurs. The thought barely had time to form before a sharp whistle cut through the night, signaling an aggressive push from the hostiles. Mara reacted instinctively, ducking behind cover and firing in controlled bursts, each round calculated to disrupt rather than kill, yet effective enough to halt the advance. Her squad, inspired and terrified in equal measure, followed her lead. Riker moved closer, voice low but urgent. "Leighton, what are they? You know them, don't you?" Mara's eyes hardened, jaw tight. "Not exactly," she said, "but I know their style. That's all you need to survive for now." Explosions of noise, shouted orders, and the smell of ozone from discharged rounds filled the night. Mara's mind worked like a machine, tracking movements, predicting attacks, adjusting positions, protecting civilians and squadmates alike. Time became a distorted concept. Seconds stretched, compressing into a rhythm of survival and precision. As the squad regrouped behind a reinforced barricade, the floodlights illuminating the swirling dust and chaos, Mara allowed herself a brief glance at the enemy. Their numbers were overwhelming. Outnumbered, yes, but disorganized. That small opening was all she needed. She took a deep breath, centering herself. Calm, calculated, ready. She wasn't just reacting, she was preparing to take the initiative. And in that moment, the realization struck Riker and the squad members who had watched in awe. Mara Leighton wasn't just surviving. She was controlling the battlefield. The quiet girl they had underestimated was already redefining the fight. Yet even as adrenaline surged, Mara couldn't shake the feeling in the pit of her stomach, the familiarity of the enemy's formation, their methodical approach. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Another night, another attack, another life-or-death scenario where hesitation had cost lives. The memory sent a shiver down her spine. She tightened her grip on her rifle. Something was coming, something bigger. The night had just begun. And Mara knew instinctively that the real test, the one that would challenge everything she had learned, everything she had survived, was waiting just beyond the shadows. The night air was thick with dust, smoke, and the acrid tang of spent gunpowder. The south sector of Fort Carson, normally a place of drills and controlled chaos, had transformed into a theater of raw, uncontrolled panic. Mara Leighton crouched behind a concrete barricade, rifle raised, scanning the shadows that darted between the floodlights. Her squad had formed a semicircle, weapons trembling in hands that weren't used to true fear. But Mara was different, calm, precise, like a predator sizing up its prey. A sudden movement caught her attention, a silhouette moving aggressively toward the perimeter, a hostile intent in every step. Without hesitation, Mara adjusted her footing and fired a single, sharp shot, a warning precise, meant to stop the intruder in his tracks. Crack! The echo ricocheted across the buildings. Her squad froze. Time seemed to stretch. Even the hostiles paused, momentarily stunned. The air vibrated with tension as Mara's gaze swept the area. Every hostile was calculating now, cautious, and every squad member was staring at her, some with awe, some with disbelief. The quiet girl, the one they had dismissed as unremarkable, was controlling the battlefield with nothing but calm and calculated authority. Staff Sergeant Riker stepped forward, shouting over the alarms. "Leighton, step back, that's my order." Mara's eyes met his, unblinking hard. "No, Sergeant," she said firmly. "We don't wait, we act." Riker froze, caught off guard. He had never seen a soldier, especially a rookie, command with such authority during live combat. He opened his mouth to protest but closed it again. Mara's intuition had bought them a crucial advantage. She assessed the enemy movements with rapid precision. The hostiles were spread out, attempting to flank the squad. Their spacing, their hesitation, even their direction, it all told Mara that they weren't mere opportunists. They were trained, professional, dangerous. "Two at the east entrance, cover that," she ordered, pointing with a sharp movement of her arm. The assigned soldiers hesitated, their uncertainty palpable, but her calm intensity forced compliance. They moved, covering the approach, and Mara pivoted, scanning the shadows. Another hostile dashed from behind a supply crate, intent on breaking through the squad's line. Mara reacted instantly. She lunged, using the butt of her rifle to knock him off balance, then twisted, dropping him to the ground with a controlled force that left no room for recovery. The hostiles faltered. Her squad's jaws dropped. She's not just good," one whispered behind her. Another added, almost in awe, "She's something else." Riker's eyes narrowed. He had trained soldiers in combat simulations, in live-fire exercises, and even in chaotic field operations. but he had never seen precision and instinct meld into such lethal clarity, especially in someone so young. Mara wasn't just reacting. She was predicting, controlling, and dominating the battlefield. The hostiles attempted another maneuver, converging on the squad from multiple directions. Mara moved with uncanny speed, intercepting the closest threat, redirecting the others with succinct, authoritative commands. Left flank, push right, move. Her words were sharp, each one carrying weight and urgency. Soldiers who had doubted her now followed without hesitation. Riker noticed something unsettling. The hostiles were adjusting based on her actions, almost as if they recognized her. It was subtle but unmistakable. Mara's movements were familiar to them, precise, calculated, like someone who had faced them before. A chill ran down Riker's spine. Mara sensed it too. A flicker of unease passed over her features for a brief instant, just enough to hint at the memories she had buried long ago. She pushed it aside. Survival was the priority. She didn't have time for hesitation. Not now. She fired another round, aimed deliberately to disrupt rather than kill, forcing two intruders to retreat behind cover. Her squad adjusted instantly, gaining ground, consolidating positions. Mara's awareness of the environment, of enemy spacing, of her squad's capabilities, created a synergy that turned a chaotic situation into a controlled engagement. And then the unthinkable happened. A shadow detached itself from the main group and rushed directly toward her position, faster than the others. Mara didn't flinch. She stepped forward, meeting the intruder head-on. A quick spin, a precise strike to the chest with her rifle butt, and the hostile was down, sprawled across the concrete. The squad watched in stunned silence. Riker's voice broke through, low and incredulous. "Leighton, what are you doing?" "Taking control," Mara said, eyes scanning for the next threat. The squad's perception of her shifted in that instant. The rookie, the quiet one, the one they had dismissed, was no longer just surviving. She was leading, commanding, dominating. And the realization struck every soldier present. Underestimating her was no longer an option. Mara adjusted her stance, breathing steady despite the chaos, every muscle poised for the next move. She scanned the horizon, noting every shadow, every flicker of movement. She predicted the next approach of the hostiles before they made it, directing her squad with a clarity that made them feel as if they were extensions of her will. Riker, watching from slightly behind, realized the unthinkable. Mara wasn't just skilled, she was extraordinary. Her calm under pressure, her strategic insight, her precise, lethal reactions, all of it suggested experience far beyond her years. And the patterns she recognized, they weren't random. Mara knew these hostiles, or at least she knew the style in which they operated. "Watch the east flank," she barked again. "Two more coming through the crates." Soldiers scrambled to comply, finally moving in synchronized motion, guided by Mara's unwavering command. A heavy sense of tension settled over the base. The hostiles, once aggressive, now hesitated, uncertain. Mara had seized the momentum. Her squad was alive because she had acted first, decisively, without waiting for orders, without faltering. Even as she moved to cover the east side, Mara's mind raced. Every instinct screamed that this was bigger than a simple perimeter breach. The hostiles weren't acting randomly. They were methodical, disciplined. They weren't just testing the defenses, they were looking for something specific, someone specific. Her pulse quickened ever so slightly, not from fear, but from recognition. Memories surfaced unbidden, memories of past operations, of training exercises that should have remained classified, of nights where hesitation meant death. The pattern in the hostiles, movements matched training she had endured, training she was never supposed to discuss. The thought barely formed before another shadow darted across her peripheral vision. Mara pivoted, rifle ready, moving with instinctual precision. Another hostile, another threat neutralized before it could even reach her squad. Each movement, each strike, each command reinforced the stark reality. Mara Leighton was not ordinary. She was a force of calculated precision, a soldier who turned fear into advantage. The squad, initially panicked, began to rely on her instinctively. Her quiet, commanding presence provided a focal point in the chaos. Even Riker, experienced and battle-hardened, found himself deferring, silently acknowledging her superior situational awareness. And yet beneath the calm exterior, Mara felt a tremor of something else, recognition. The enemy's movements were too precise, too familiar. She knew this style. She had seen it before. And she knew in her bones that this was not just an attack on the base, it was a hunt. As the last shadows retreated behind cover, Mara lowered her rifle briefly, scanning the battlefield. Her squad had survived, alive but shaken. The hostiles had paused, regrouped, hesitant to advance further. Mara's decisive action had shifted the balance, buying critical time for reinforcements or countermeasures. Riker stepped forward, voice low, almost reverent. "Leighton, how did you know?" Mara didn't answer. She simply scanned the perimeter again, eyes sharp, mind calculating. She knew this was only the beginning. The calm had been shattered, but survival required focus, and she would remain vigilant. The night was far from over. The hostiles were out there, watching, waiting, and calculating. Mara's actions had changed the engagement, stunned everyone present, and revealed a truth no one on the base was ready for. The quiet, unassuming soldier they had dismissed was not only capable, she was extraordinary. And as Mara repositioned herself for the next potential strike, a flicker of recognition crossed her mind. These attackers weren't random. They were trained. They knew the tactics she knew. They had a purpose. And that purpose, Mara was about to find out. The base was now alive with chaos, every corner lit with sporadic bursts of floodlights, alarms blaring a relentless warning. Mara Leighton moved through it with fluid precision, the calm eye at the center of the storm. Her squad followed her almost instinctively now, guided by the quiet authority that radiated from her presence. But the enemy wasn't slowing down. If anything, they were adapting, becoming bolder, faster, and more aggressive. From her vantage point atop a reinforced barricade, Mara could see the full scope of the assault. Shadows darted between buildings, explosions rocked the perimeters, and the distant sound of gunfire and shouted orders created a chaotic symphony. Mara's eyes, sharp and calculating, registered every detail. The hostiles weren't just attacking. They were probing weaknesses, testing reactions, and seeking a gap to exploit. "Left flank," Mara barked, pointing toward a narrow alley where shadows moved with predatory intent. Her squad scrambled into position, their movements more coordinated than they had ever been. Mara didn't just direct them, she anticipated every move, predicting enemy behavior with unnerving accuracy. Every soldier under her command felt it, a combination of fear, awe, and absolute trust in her instincts. Explosions jolted the ground nearby. Mara dove behind cover, rifle raised. One of the hostiles attempted a quick dash toward her position. She fired 2 sharp, controlled rounds, hitting the target in a way that stopped him without taking unnecessary risk. Her squad stared, wide-eyed. Even those who had doubted her skill now moved with renewed confidence. Staff Sergeant Riker approached, shouting over the noise. "Leighton, you're taking too many risks, step back." Mara met his gaze without hesitation. "No, Sergeant," she said firmly. "Holding the line requires precision, not fear. Watch." She pivoted smoothly, spotting another shadow attempting to flank from the opposite side. Without pause, she fired a single round, then rolled forward behind cover, re-emerging in seconds to deliver another precise burst. The movement was seamless, instinctual, and devastatingly effective. Hostiles faltered, confusion flickering across their coordinated assault. Riker, despite his experience, couldn't hide the realization. Mara wasn't just responding to the attack, she was controlling it. Her understanding of tactics, spatial awareness, and timing was beyond anyone he had trained or led. The assault escalated. Multiple hostiles converged from the east perimeter, their approach faster, more coordinated. Mara's squad was outnumbered, and yet she moved with a terrifying calm, redirecting them, anticipating enemy strikes and neutralizing threats before they reached critical points. A sudden burst of gunfire erupted from the north, taking two soldiers off guard. Mara's reflexes kicked in instantly. She dove, covering their retreat, her rifle taking precise aim at the advancing hostiles. Another shot, another shadow neutralized. She didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. Each action was deliberate, calculated to protect her squad while maintaining control of the battlefield. One of the newer recruits, barely 18, faltered under the pressure, his hands trembling as he raised his weapon. Mara's eyes locked on him. She didn't speak, words were unnecessary. A subtle gesture, a pointed finger, a shift of her stance communicated everything. The recruit steadied himself, following her lead. The smallest motion, the quietest guidance, it was enough to save lives in the chaos. The enemy, now realizing their previous tactics were ineffective, adapted. They struck harder, faster, attempting to overwhelm the south sector. Mara noticed a weak point in the barricade, a gap where cover was insufficient. She moved instantly, positioning herself to block it, using her body as both shield and anchor. "Hold it," she shouted, voice sharp, unwavering. The squad tightened their formation, inspired by her presence despite the overwhelming odds. Mara's calculated aggression had bought them time, but she knew it wouldn't last. A flash of movement caught her eye, the leader of the hostile group, distinguishable by the way he coordinated the others. Mara recognized something familiar in his approach. The same pattern, the same calculated rhythm she had encountered before in training exercises long buried in her memory. Her jaw tightened. These weren't just random attackers. They were professionals, trained, organized, and here for a purpose. Mara adjusted her position, rifle at the ready. She fired a precise shot, forcing the leader to pause, disrupt the rhythm, and retreat momentarily. Every second she bought was precious. Her squad now had breathing room, regrouping and stabilizing their line. Riker's voice cut through the noise, urgent and incredulous. "Leighton, where did you learn to do that?" Mara didn't answer. She scanned the battlefield, calculating the next move, prioritizing protection and survival. Words were unnecessary in the heat of combat. Action spoke louder than any explanation. The fight intensified further. The hostiles attempted a coordinated push through the center barricade. Mara intercepted, moving with fluid speed, striking decisively at two of them with her rifle butt, taking the others by surprise. Her squad followed her lead, their movements sharper, more synchronized, inspired by her decisiveness. Explosions rocked nearby supply crates, sending debris flying. Mara pivoted mid-motion, avoiding falling fragments while continuing to engage the attackers. Her mind worked faster than anyone could follow, calculating angles, distances, and trajectories. She was a conductor orchestrating chaos into a symphony of survival. Amid the firefight, Mara noticed another flash from the perimeter, a group attempting to circle behind her squad. Her heart didn't race, adrenaline didn't cloud her judgment. She raised her rifle, firing two controlled shots, halting their advance. Her squad's morale surged. They had been outnumbered on the verge of collapse, and yet here they stood, alive, coordinated, and inspired by a single soldier's command. Riker, watching from a higher vantage point, felt an unsettling awe. The quiet, underestimated rookie had become the center of the fight. Every decision, every action had shifted the battle in their favor. He realized with reluctant respect that Mara wasn't just surviving, she was dominating the battlefield. The hostiles began to retreat, regrouping at the edges of the perimeter, their assault blunted but not broken. Mara's squad, battered but intact, held the line, breathing heavily, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Mara, standing at the center, rifle lowered just slightly, scanned the battlefield. She knew this was only the beginning. The attackers had tested them tonight, but they would return more organized, more relentless. Mara's mind, calm yet vigilant, began anticipating the next phase. Even as the immediate threat receded, Mara's instincts remained razor-sharp. Every shadow, every sound, every subtle movement was catalogued, stored, analyzed. The night had tested them, pushed them to their limits, but it had also revealed a harsh truth. Underestimating Mara Leighton was a mistake no one would ever make again. Her squad gathered near her, exhausted, yet alive. They stared at her, awe and fear mingling in their expressions. Mara's presence had not only stabilized them, it had transformed them. They had witnessed a soldier who could act with precision, clarity, and authority in the face of overwhelming odds. And somewhere in the shadows, Mara felt it, the lingering presence of the enemy. They weren't gone. They were watching, calculating, waiting. The real threat was still out there, and she knew that survival required vigilance, decisiveness, and readiness to strike first. Mara adjusted her grip on her rifle, eyes narrowing. Tonight had been a trial, a storm she had weathered with precision. But the next wave, she knew, would demand more speed, more strategy, more instinct. And she would be ready. Because Mara Leighton didn't wait for danger to strike. She struck first. The midnight sky over Fort Carson was a black canvas pierced by the frantic glare of floodlights and the intermittent flash of gunfire. The perimeter, once a line of defense, had become a battlefield. Mara Leighton crouched behind a reinforced barricade, her rifle tight against her shoulder, eyes scanning every shadow with razor-sharp precision. She could hear the distant thunder of engines. The enemy was regrouping, planning a more aggressive assault. Her squad, though inspired by her leadership, was exhausted. Breathing heavily, adrenaline still coursing, they followed her silently. Mara's calm intensity created a strange, almost hypnotic order in the chaos, but even she knew this was no longer just a test. It was survival. "Listen up," Mara barked, her voice cutting through the din. "They'll hit hard, fast, predictable if we stay sharp. We don't wait, we act." Her words were brief but commanding, leaving no room for hesitation. The squad tightened their formation. Mara's mind raced, calculating angles, cover, and the timing of enemy advances. Every shadow, every flicker of movement was accounted for. The first wave hit seconds later. Shadows emerged from the tree line beyond the barricade, moving faster, more coordinated than before. Mara acted first. She pivoted, firing 3 precise rounds that struck key targets, forcing the closest attackers to take cover. Her squad, now conditioned by her instincts, moved as she directed, forming a tighter, more defensive formation. "East flank," Mara shouted, spotting a small group attempting to bypass the barricade. Her voice was sharp, unwavering. The squad reacted instantly. Mara's orders weren't suggestions, they were lifelines. Soldiers moved with a new rhythm, guided by her calm but commanding presence. One of the hostiles tried to rush past her line, weapon raised. Mara didn't hesitate. With a swift movement, she struck him with the butt of her rifle, knocking him off balance and sending him sprawling. Her squad watched in stunned silence, all mingled with fear. Mara wasn't just fighting, she was orchestrating the battle, her every action precise, calculated, and decisive. Riker, observing from a vantage point, felt an uneasy admiration. He had trained soldiers in countless engagements, but he had never seen someone so young command such authority in the midst of real combat. Mara was redefining everything he thought he knew about battlefield control. But even as she neutralized threats, Mara's instincts screamed that the danger was far from over. The enemy's movements were deliberate, their tactics sophisticated. They weren't attacking blindly. They were probing for weaknesses, testing reactions, and adapting in real time. Mara's pulse remained steady, but a cold awareness settled in her chest. The enemy wasn't just testing them, they were hunting. And Mara knew instinctively that the next assault would be more dangerous, more precise, and possibly lethal. A sudden explosion tore through the barricade on the left flank. 2 of Mara's squadmates were thrown to the ground, groaning in pain. Mara didn't hesitate. She rolled forward, rifle raised, and fired with lethal precision, neutralizing the attackers advancing through the breach. She pulled her squad back, repositioning them to reinforce the compromised flank. "Stay tight, don't break formation," Mara commanded, voice calm but resolute. Her squad followed, moving like extensions of her will. Every decision, every movement was calculated to maximize survival, control the battlefield, and protect the team. The enemy regrouped quickly, attacking from multiple directions. Mara adjusted seamlessly, her mind mapping trajectories, cover, and enemy patterns. She moved through the chaos with fluid precision, intercepting threats, guiding her squad, and maintaining the fragile balance between defense and counterattack. One soldier faltered, overwhelmed by fear. Mara caught his gaze, her eyes locking onto his, conveying calm, focus, and authority. A subtle nod from her was enough. The soldier steadied, gripping his weapon with renewed determination. Mara didn't need to speak. Her presence alone commanded obedience and trust. Suddenly, Mara spotted a figure darting toward the south perimeter, carrying a device that glinted ominously in the floodlights. Her mind processed the threat instantly. Explosives. If the device detonated, the barricade could collapse, leaving the squad exposed. Without hesitation, Mara sprinted forward, intercepting the figure with a combination of speed, skill, and brute force. She struck first, a precise kick that sent the hostile sprawling. Her rifle cracked against his shoulder, forcing him to drop the device. Mara rolled backward, rifle trained on him as he scrambled to recover. With another sharp movement, she neutralized him, securing the device. The squad stared, wide-eyed. She's unstoppable," one whispered behind her, half in awe, half in fear. Riker, panting from exertion, approached cautiously. "Leighton, how do you?" His voice trailed off. He realized the truth. Mara's calm, decisive actions weren't just skill. They were instinct honed by experience no one at the base could imagine. But Mara had no time for recognition. The enemy wasn't finished. Mara's instincts screamed that the final assault was coming. The shadows moved differently now, coordinated, aggressive, more lethal. She adjusted her stance, scanning, calculating, anticipating. The hostiles struck simultaneously from three sides, overwhelming the barricades with sheer numbers. Mara pivoted, rolling and firing, intercepting two attackers while signaling the squad to shift positions. Each move was precise, lethal, and calculated. Her squad, inspired and terrified, followed her guidance, surviving when they might otherwise have been overwhelmed. A sudden flash caught her attention, a grenade tossed toward the center of the formation. Mara's reflexes were instantaneous. She lunged forward, grabbing the device, and with a controlled roll, hurled it away from the squad. It exploded harmlessly, but the shockwave rattled everyone. Mara stood, breathing steady, rifle ready. The squad members were staring at her now, disbelief and awe written across their faces. The quiet, underestimated rookie had become the fulcrum on which the battle balanced. She wasn't just surviving, she was holding the line against impossible odds. Riker, finally speaking, muttered under his breath, almost to himself, "I've never seen anything like this." But Mara didn't hear him. Her focus remained absolute, eyes scanning for the next threat, mind calculating, predicting, controlling. She had bought the squad time, protected them from near-certain disaster, and neutralized threats with a precision that left even the most seasoned soldiers questioning their own abilities. And yet, beneath her calm exterior, Mara felt the familiar flicker of unease. The enemy's style, their coordination, their relentless aggression, it was too familiar. She had faced this pattern before, in missions and scenarios that were classified, dangerous, and hidden from public knowledge. Her pulse remained steady, but the recognition sent a shiver down her spine. The final wave of attackers surged, attempting to breach the barricade in a coordinated push. Mara stepped forward, rifle raised, eyes locked on the approaching threat. She struck first, neutralizing the lead figure with a precise shot that halted the momentum. The squad followed her guidance, holding the line, and slowly the attackers began to falter. Mara's mind remained sharp, calculating the battlefield, anticipating every movement. She moved through the chaos with lethal precision, each action protecting her squad, controlling the fight, and buying the time necessary to survive. Finally, as the night wore on, the attackers began to retreat, regrouping at the perimeter, their assault blunted but not broken. Mara's squad, battered and exhausted, held their ground. They had survived the impossible, not because of numbers or firepower, but because of her. Mara lowered her rifle slightly, scanning the battlefield one last time. She knew this wasn't over. The enemy was still out there, watching, calculating, waiting. And the next attack would demand even more strategy, more speed, more instinct. But Mara Leighton was ready. She had survived impossible odds before, and she would do it again. The base had been tested, and she had held the line. The squad gathered near her, shaken but alive. Their faces reflected awe, fear, and respect. Mara's presence had transformed them, inspired them, and kept them alive. They understood now that the quiet, unassuming soldier they had dismissed was extraordinary. And somewhere beyond the perimeter, Mara could feel the enemy's eyes, their attention fixed, their intentions clear. They would return, stronger, smarter, deadlier. But Mara was ready. She had acted first, struck decisively, and survived against impossible odds. And the night, though fraught with danger, had proven one undeniable truth. Mara Leighton wasn't just a soldier. She was a force to be reckoned with. Enemy had tested them. She had held the line. And the real battle, the one that would push her to the edge, was yet to come. The base lay in tense, chaotic quiet as Mara Leighton scanned the horizon. The immediate threat had been held at bay, but the night had proven one truth: the enemy was relentless. Their assault wasn't just a test of firepower, it was a psychological war. Mara's instincts told her this wasn't random. They had been studying the base, measuring weaknesses, identifying the squad's limits. And now, they were preparing for the final assault, the one that would push her and the squad to their breaking points. Mara crouched behind a reinforced barricade, her rifle cradled against her shoulder. She could hear her squad breathing, their fear barely masked by adrenaline-fueled determination. They were battered, exhausted, and outnumbered, but Mara's presence made them steady. She was their anchor, the calm in the storm, the mind that mapped every shadow and every possibility. The first hint of movement came as a low rustling at the north perimeter. Mara's eyes narrowed. She spotted the glint of equipment under the floodlights, grenades, rifles, and something heavier, larger than before. This was no longer a simple breach. It was a full-on assault, coordinated and deadly. "Positions," Mara commanded, voice sharp, cutting through the night. Her squad scrambled into formation, guided by the calm authority radiating from her every motion. Mara didn't waste time. She had identified the weak points in the barricades, the vulnerable angles where hostiles could breach, and the flanking routes they were most likely to exploit. The first wave struck with brutal precision. Shadows lunged from the tree line, moving faster, stronger, more coordinated than before. Mara fired the first shot sharp, controlled, precise. One hostile went down immediately. Another stumbled, thrown off balance. Her squad followed her lead, moving like extensions of her will, each action guided by her quiet, commanding presence. Riker barked orders from a nearby vantage point, his voice strained. "Leighton, don't take unnecessary risks. Step back." Mara ignored him. She didn't step back. She moved forward. Anticipation and experience had taught her that hesitation was death. The enemy had numbers, but she had foresight. She struck first, decisive, lethal, and in complete control of the engagement. A grenade arced toward the barricade. Mara caught sight of it mid-flight. Her reflexes were instantaneous. She lunged forward, grabbed the grenade, and rolled, hurling it back into the shadows. It exploded harmlessly, a plume of smoke and debris marking the exact point where a breach could have been catastrophic. Her squad gasped, awe and fear mingling in their expressions. From the shadows, a figure emerged, taller, more imposing than the rest, carrying a high-powered rifle. Mara froze for only a fraction of a second. Recognition flickered in her mind. This was the leader, the one coordinating the enemy's assault. He moved like a predator, precise, patient, calculating. Her instincts flared. She had faced this pattern before, in a different time, a different place, and she knew exactly what he would attempt next. She pivoted, firing a sharp shot that forced him behind cover. The momentary hesitation was all she needed. Mara barked orders to her squad, moving them to cover the east flank. Every step, every shot, every gesture was calculated to control the battlefield. The enemy pressed harder, now attacking from 3 directions simultaneously. Mara's squad was outnumbered, fatigued, but they moved with precision under her guidance. She intercepted hostiles mid-advance, neutralizing threats with calculated strikes. Her rifle and her hands became instruments of survival, every motion deliberate, every action effective. One soldier faltered, panic overtaking him. Mara's eyes locked onto his, piercing through fear with a calm intensity. A subtle gesture, a nod, a pointing finger was enough. The soldier steadied, returning to his position with renewed focus. Mara didn't need words. Her presence alone communicated authority, confidence, and lethal precision. The leader of the enemy advanced again, his eyes locked on Mara. He moved with intent, a tactical brilliance that mirrored her own. Mara's pulse quickened, not with fear but with recognition. She had anticipated this move. Her mind raced, calculating angles, distances, and timing. She knew exactly how to counter him, but executing it would require split-second precision. As he raised his rifle, Mara acted first. She pivoted, rolling to the left, firing a controlled burst that struck him in the shoulder. The leader staggered, cursing under his breath, momentarily thrown off balance. Mara seized the moment, moving forward with unmatched precision. She struck again, this time with the butt of her rifle, sending him sprawling to the ground. The squad froze, awestruck. The enemy had lost their center of command. But Mara didn't pause. She scanned the perimeter, anticipating the next wave. Shadows shifted, hostiles regrouping, testing their options. Mara's mind worked faster than anyone could follow, predicting their every move, adjusting her squad's positions, neutralizing threats before they could reach critical points. The chaos intensified. Explosions tore through barricades, gunfire crackled, and smoke filled the night. Mara's focus remained absolute. Every movement, every shot, every command was executed with a terrifying precision. Her squad, inspired and terrified, followed without hesitation. A grenade landed near the center of their formation. Mara lunged forward, scooping it up and throwing it back into the shadows. It detonated harmlessly, a plume of fire marking the moment she had turned potential disaster into control. Her squad stared, wide-eyed. She was untouchable, unstoppable, and completely in command. From a higher vantage point, Riker observed with disbelief. The rookie, the quiet, underestimated soldier, had become the fulcrum of the battle. Every movement, every decision had shifted the tide in their favor. Mara wasn't just surviving. She was dominating, orchestrating chaos into order, and inspiring those around her to do the impossible. And yet beneath the calm exterior, Mara felt the stirrings of unease. The enemy's tactics were too familiar, their coordination too precise. She recognized the pattern from missions long buried, scenarios she was never supposed to revisit. The realization sent a shiver down her spine. This was more than an assault, it was a test, a hunt. And she was the prey in a way only she could understand. The final wave surged, more organized, more aggressive. Mara pivoted, striking first, neutralizing the lead attacker with a precise shot that halted the momentum. The squad followed her lead, holding the line, and slowly the attackers began to falter. Her mind remained sharp, calculating every angle, every threat, every possible outcome. She moved like a conductor, orchestrating chaos into survival. Every step, every command, every shot was executed with lethal precision. The squad's confidence surged as they realized they could rely on her instincts, her foresight, and her unwavering calm. Finally, as the first light of dawn broke across the horizon, the enemy began to retreat, regrouping at the perimeter. Mara's squad, battered but alive, had held the line against overwhelming odds. They had survived not because of numbers, not because of firepower, but because of one soldier's calm authority, instinctual brilliance, and decisive action. Mara lowered her rifle slightly, scanning the battlefield one last time. She knew this wasn't over. The enemy was still out there, watching, waiting, and calculating. But for now, they had survived. And the base had witnessed a soldier who could strike first, hold the line, and dominate under impossible pressure. Her squad gathered around her, awe and fear mingling in their expressions. Mara's presence had transformed them, inspired them, and kept them alive. They understood now. The quiet, unassuming soldier they had dismissed was extraordinary. And somewhere beyond the perimeter, Mara felt it, the enemy's attention fixed, their intentions clear. They would return, stronger, smarter, deadlier. But Mara was ready. She had survived impossible odds before, and she would do it again. She had struck first, held the line, and shocked everyone on the base. The real battle, the one that would test her limits, her strategy, and her courage, was yet to come. And Mara Leighton would be waiting. The first light of dawn crept over Fort Carson, painting the horizon in streaks of gold and crimson. Smoke still rose from scorched barricades, the acrid smell of gunpowder lingering in the air, and the distant groans of wounded soldiers punctuated the eerie calm. Mara Leighton remained crouched behind the reinforced barricade, her rifle ready, every muscle tense, eyes scanning the perimeter for any sign of the returning enemy. The battle of the night had been relentless, chaotic, and terrifying, but she had held the line. Her squad, battered yet alive, looked to her with awe and gratitude. For them, Mara had become a symbol of calm in the storm, a force capable of turning panic into precision and fear into strategy. But Mara's mind was already several steps ahead, calculating, anticipating, and preparing for the inevitable. The enemy would not retreat for long. From the command tower, Staff Sergeant Riker watched Mara with a mix of relief and disbelief. The rookie who had been underestimated, dismissed as quiet and inexperienced, had led the defense and turned the tide of battle. His pride in her courage was tempered with unease. How could someone so young, so seemingly unremarkable, possess such clarity, precision, and instinct in the midst of chaos? "Leighton," Riker called, his voice carrying over the comms status. Mara's reply was calm, almost eerily so. All quadrants secured, casualties minimal, enemy retreating but regrouping, likely to strike again in force if reinforcements aren't deployed soon. Riker nodded, recognizing her foresight. He had witnessed her anticipate every move of the enemy during the previous hours, neutralizing threats before they became critical. Mara wasn't just surviving, she was dictating the battlefield. But Mara didn't relax. Her instincts were honed by experience she rarely spoke of, a past that had taught her that victory in war often came not from firepower, but from perception, timing, and decisiveness. She knew the night wasn't over, not truly. The enemy's retreat was a pause, a calculated measure to strike again with more aggression, and Mara would be ready. A movement at the tree line caught her attention. She raised her rifle, eyes narrowing. Shadows emerged, smaller, faster, but coordinated. Mara didn't flinch. She adjusted her stance, pivoting on her heel, and fired 2 precise bursts, forcing the intruders to take cover. Her squad reacted instantly, positioning themselves under her guidance, holding the line with newfound confidence. Then came the unexpected. A flare shot into the sky, illuminating the battlefield. The enemy leader, the one Mara had recognized earlier, stepped into the light, his eyes locking onto hers. The recognition was mutual. He had tested her, adapted to her tactics, and now faced her in a final confrontation. Mara's pulse remained steady, but her mind raced. She had anticipated this moment, predicted his movements, and prepared her squad accordingly. "Move," she commanded, her voice cutting through the dawn. The squad advanced with her, shields raised, weapons ready. Mara led the charge toward the enemy, moving with precision and calculated force. Her rifle fired in controlled bursts, each shot disorienting and halting the attacker's advance. The leader approached, his weapon raised, but Mara had already anticipated his trajectory. She pivoted, striking first, a precise motion that disarmed him and sent him sprawling. Her squad followed, neutralizing the remaining hostiles with surgical efficiency. The enemy's assault collapsed, leaving the field under Mara's command. Breathing heavily, Mara surveyed the aftermath. The barricades had been tested, scorched and battered, but they had held. Her squad, exhausted and battered, stood beside her, alive. Their respect for her was palpable. The rookie they had underestimated had become a legend in a single night. Riker approached cautiously, eyes wide with awe. "Leighton, how did you do it?" Mara didn't answer immediately. She scanned the perimeter one last time, ensuring there were no hidden threats. Then she lowered her rifle and met his gaze. "We held because we acted first. We survived because we didn't hesitate. Fear slows people down, precision speeds them up." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The squad absorbed the truth. Victory wasn't just about weapons or numbers. It was about decisiveness, instinct, and courage under pressure. Mara had embodied all three. A sudden commotion drew their attention. Reinforcements from the central base arrived, soldiers moving in disciplined formation to secure the perimeter fully. The tension eased slightly, but Mara's instincts remained alert. She knew the enemy might attempt one final strike, and she would not allow complacency to cost lives. As medics moved among the wounded, Mara knelt beside one of her squad members, checking him over. His arm was grazed, but he would survive. Mara's eyes softened for the briefest moment. Her toughness, forged through countless trials, never obscured her compassion. She had led them through fire, and she would continue to protect them until the threat was neutralized. The morning sun rose higher, illuminating the scarred battlefield. Mara stood, surveying the aftermath. Broken barricades, spent shells, scorched earth, and the lingering smoke of battle painted a portrait of what had been a near-impossible fight. And in the center of it all stood Mara Leighton, calm, unyielding, and resolute. Riker stepped forward, saluting, a gesture Mara had not expected. "Staff Sergeant reporting, ma'am," he said, his voice tinged with respect and disbelief. You saved this sector. You saved lives, and you did it all alone." Mara nodded silently, acknowledging the praise without allowing it to cloud her focus. She scanned the perimeter once more. The enemy was gone for now, but the memory of their assault, the familiarity of their tactics, reminded her that this night would not be the last. They would return, stronger, smarter, more dangerous. And when they did, Mara would be ready. Her squad gathered around her, awe and admiration evident in their faces. They had witnessed something extraordinary. A rookie soldier who had struck first, held the line against overwhelming odds, and emerged victorious where others might have fallen. Mara's presence had changed them, inspired them, and ensured their survival. For Mara, the battle had ended, but the war was far from over. The night had tested her, revealed her instincts, and demonstrated her unparalleled skill. She had survived impossible odds, struck first when it mattered most, and shocked everyone on the base. And now, as the sun rose over Fort Carson, Mara Leighton's legend had begun. The enemy had underestimated her, and in doing so they had learned a lesson they would never forget. Mara Leighton was not just a soldier, she was a force. She had struck first, controlled the battlefield, and held the line against overwhelming odds. And the memory of this night, the proof of her courage and skill, would echo through the base for years to come. Mara's eyes scanned the horizon one final time, sharp and unwavering. The danger might return, but she was ready. She had faced the impossible, survived, and emerged stronger. The squad looked to her, trusting her instinct, her decisions, and her courage. She had proven herself beyond doubt. And somewhere beyond the hills and the shadows, the enemy had taken note. They had tested her and they had failed. Mara Leighton had struck first. She had held the line. She had shocked everyone on the base. And she would do it again if necessary. The dawn of victory had arrived, but Mara knew this was only the beginning.